So what if you have resources that you want to have some control and visibility and access for your resource relationships given your parent resource? So this is what I'm going to learn now in a very fast way. So first of all, let's learn how we can hide your resources on the sidebar. So for instance, you have these users here, and I'm going to hide these resource users from the left. So all you have to do is to go to your resource here, as I already placed here the code base, and you just need to actually override this static attribute called display navigation. As soon as you pass it to false and you do an F5, it just disappears here from the left. But as you can see, you still have access to it because it's just actually to hide the resource label on the left. Sorry, just removing this. It's just to hide the resource on the left and nothing else. So again, if I go here and in the top I write users, I can still have access to it. To completely disable the access to your resource, as you already learned on the user policy, you need to actually use the view any to false, and in that case the resource is completely deactivated, and in this case it is going to give a 403 error, as you can see. So the other thing that we need to learn is, what about our relatable resources? So for instance, if I go here to our products, I can see that I have these relatable resources like the orders, right, with the relationship many-to-many, and we have this button that says attach order. So what I want is, how do I control the buttons on our relatable resources? And to do that, and I already have here the code base too, just to show to you, you go to the policy of your main resource, in this case product policy, and you can actually add the attach order and detached order, because it's a many-to-many. If it was a belongs to one-to-many, you use the add and not the attach, and you actually pass one less parameter at the end because you are just attaching it. In this case, because it's a many-to-many, you need to pass on the second parameter the product, and on the third parameter your relatable model that is coming from the fact that you are trying to attach the button, the order there. So what does this mean? If I go here and I put a false, the button just disappears immediately. So, and you see it now, right? So all you can do is to actually control this with some logic. For instance, you can say return, and you say product ID 62. Oops, sorry. So what does this mean? Only for the product ID 62, I should see the button to actually attach an order. So here we go. You see it there, but when I go to the products and I go to the 61, I should not see the button attach an order there. Here we go. So you don't see it there. You can actually view, but you cannot do anything else because you don't have permissions to do that. So that's where this permissions logic using this attach order. So this is completely new for your policy. It doesn't come on the foundation of Laravel. It's just used on the Laravel Nova methods on your policy model that you need to have. And finally, you also have the detach order, and this works in contrary. When you are trying to detach an order, you also can use a condition here to allow the ones that you want, or just return a false and you cannot detach them at all. So if I put a true here, in this case, as you can see here, now you can detach them. See, the button appears. Okay, that's it for now, and thanks for watching. As you already saw in the previous tutorials, the index view allows you to see the resources that are currently available to you to work on. So for instance, on this case, on these total orders, the index view is showing me all the orders that I have here available on my database. So this is possible, as we saw previously, because we are using these policies now, where that are connected, of course, to the order. And then from here, we actually return a true or false. So if I return a true, I have the possibility to view all the resources. As you know, if we return a false, then if I do a quick refresh here, you'll see that actually there is no way you can now access those resources to view them, to view the detail. So this is good to actually have this accessibility action and permissions, as we already saw before. But what happens now when you want to actually filter data on the index? So for that, Laravel Nova has a static property that you can override, and I'm just going to copy paste the code that you just need to put on your resource here. So if you go to your resource class and you just add this static index query, so it comes on the documentation, and what I want to show to you here is how it works and actually when you should use it, and let's say the cave hits of using it or not. So for that, on the index query, as we saw here, it just, when you override it, it returns a query builder object that you can just customize it the way you want, and whatever you put here, it will actually filter the data on your index view. So for instance, if I just come here and I say, okay, for these orders, I just want to see the first 10 where the ID is less than 10, so I just need to say where ID, and then you just pass like the less than 10. And if I now remove this and I do an F5, it should actually filter down. Oh, sorry, I just forgot to include here the namespace, the class namespace. It should work now. So here we go. So now what we see here is actually the first 9 that I have here, right? So it's less than 10, so you see the first 9. So you might think about, okay, so this is nice because I'm filtering data, but the thing is, you are just actually filtering data to view. So this means that if I click, for instance, on the ID number 9, it works well, but if I go now to the 52, it also works, because what you are actually doing with index query is just to filter the data on the screen. You're not actually refusing the access, denying the access to that ID that actually it comes hidden and it doesn't appear on your index query. So this is something that you need to pay attention to, is the fact that you'll see a lot of information and a lot of blogs and documentation and tutorials that talks about index query, because it says it builds an index query for the given resource, which is true, but it actually doesn't filter out, doesn't refuse the access to the anything that comes with ID bigger than actually 10. So in this case here, what you should do is to pay attention to this. For instance, if you do want to show and just give access to the first 10, then all you need to do is actually use your policy to do that. So we are going to see actually on another further lessons how to use global scopes to allow to differentiate between the permissions and the view, the access to view something. But for now, it serves pretty well if you just say return ID and then less than 10, and in this case not ID, sorry, the order ID less than 10. So you're going to see exactly the same result that is here. It also, sorry, ID less than 10, it doesn't show the same result. It actually allows you just to see the first 10. And then here with the index query, and this is the case I want to show to you, you now have the first 10, just like we saw, but because we are also applying the policy for the first 10, if now I try to access the 52, and here I go to the top, it's going to give an error. And this is exactly what you need to do to completely restrict the resources using the index query and the policy to not allow to have access to things that your user should not have access to in this case. We previously saw how to use policies to actually restrict our functionalities that we can do on each of the resource instances. But let's now see how we can filter the resource instances by the ones that we can actually see. And at the end, convey that also with some policy rules to then completely empower you to just show what you need and act on what you can actually act. So for that, what we are going to do is basically have a user here called Bruno. He has some orders attached to him, and also have another user called Philip. And then you just need to, we are going to see actually it also connects to the orders of Philip. So as an example here, this one is from Philip, and he has the orders 26. But if I am for instance, logged in as Bruno, I don't want to see this order from Philip. So to do that, we are going to use global scopes that are something that Laravel Eloquent allows you that is called model global scopes, and I really encourage you to see the documentation of Laravel about it. So how do we work on that? Here we just create a new folder called scopes, and I'm just going to create my order scope, just our global scope, and I'm just going to copy paste some code I already have here on the side. So here my order scope, what I'm doing is I'm just creating a global scope that's going to be used by the orders model. So as you can see here, when I apply this global scope, I just want to return the models that are with the user ID on the order equals to the one that logged in. So to do that, all I need to do now is to trigger that overriding the static function that is called booted on my order, and I just apply the new my order scope. From now on, the global scope my orders is connected to the model instance when it's booted, and therefore it's also used on Nova automatically. So if I do an F5 now, I should see some filtered data here. So as you can see now, the global scope is being applied, and Bruno, that is the person that is logged in, only sees his own orders. So now if I click on the fourth, of course I can see the order details because the policy is allowing me that. But if I click on if I choose fifth, I can still see another order that is not mine. And this is because Nova at this current version disables the global scopes when you were using the detailed view. And okay, it was a decision made by that. So what we now need to do is actually to restrict these using the policy. Again, we go here to the policy of the order, and on the view, what we just need to do is to actually return the result comparison results, sorry, between the order, user ID with the user that was authenticated. So in this case, if I go back here to my orders and I click on the fourth, I am still allowed to see it, my order, because it belongs to me. But you can go to the fifth, it could give an error. Exactly. So as you can see, it's very powerful to join global scopes with policies on this case. And just to do a final test for you to see it in action also, let's now enter with the other user. Very quickly. And if I go to orders, I now just see the orders from Philip. So again, global scopes to restrict the view. So it's much better than you can say, okay, but why I'm not using Index queries? Because the architecture that you can create with global scopes allow you to have much more flexibility than actually going to each resource and then tweak the index queries. If tomorrow all of the resources that are affected using orders, you need to change the index queries there, and something changes on that structure, you also need to go to all the index queries that are connected to it. And in this case, what we need to do is just to change the global scope of the orders, and it gets affected on all the related items or the main resources where that model is being used by that resource. Okay? Hope it helps, and see you on the next lesson. One business case that you can find in Laravel Nova when you are building your admin panels is, on a certain moment, you might find that you will need to create resources on the left side, on the sidebar, that are based, all of them, on the same model. So, and also with the different categories or different, attributes, that somehow it should be elected as a new resource and not just using the same parent resource or main resource for all of those categories. So just to give a quick example, imagine you have a table called users and you have a category ID that specifies what is the type of user, if it's a supplier, administrative, or client. These are absolutely normal. That can actually happen on a lot of things or on all web projects that you have. But you would like not to have the user here and then apply index queries, but actually, or global scopes or whatever, but actually have the full resource here to work on. A resource called supplier, a resource called administrative, and a resource called client, supplier administrative client, sorry. And to do that, you also want to have the flexibility to tweak those resources as you want, but all of them are connected to the same model. And this is where actually you might find out, okay, so how do I actually use the same model for this in a way that I cannot apply global scopes for each of those ones. So this is where I'm going to see how we in practice resolve this, meaning at the end you want to have 3 resources on the left side, all of them applying a specific data scope if it's a supplier, administrator, or client, and not interacting with each other on the users one. And also you want to have some flexibility in case you want to apply lenses or actions to one but not to another one. So to do that, I'm going to explain my best. I'm going to show to you how to do my best on my best experience. There might be other options, but this is the one that I'm using. So we're going to use something that is called a resource cloning. I already wrote about this on blogs, and I'm going to show here what does it mean. So first of all, you need to require this package from Caleb Horsey. It was from Titan first, but now Caleb inherited it and now it's maintaining it, so it's called parental. So what actually this package does? It does something called single table inheritance. And what does it mean? It means that you're going to extend the model, so you're going to create a new model based on another one. So it will inherit all the relationships, all the information that is on the attributes and all of that comes from the first. But when you extend it, for instance, in this case, a new one called admin, extended from user, and actually you apply this trait, anything that goes on the admin will work inside admin, but on the scope of the admin, but on the table of user. So this is very important to understand, and this is the basis for us to then create the resources based on this. So the first thing we need to do here is to actually require that. So I'm going to make a composer, require, and actually it's better just to copy it just like this. It's installing. Very good, just give it a couple of seconds till it's finished. And there you go. So with this package, now what we're going to do is to create a new model. So I'm just going to actually come here and write PHP Artisan make model, and then I'm going to call it client. Okay, so this is the one that we're just talking about. I'm just going to do for client, and then you get the idea to do for the others. So here on this client, I'm not going to extend it from the model itself, but actually I'm going to extend it from the user. So the user, it's the one that I want to be our main model, right? As we just talked about. And then I'm going to use this trait called hasParent. This is the way that we then highlight or signal this class to become an extension of the model of user. Okay, so this is how we do it. And besides that, we also are going to apply a global scope for the clients, and this is where I'm just going to copy paste here the code for the global scope. It's always the same. It comes from Laravel documentation. So here we are just going to apply a global scope, and as you can see here, what I'm saying is I want this scope to be applied as client where the category ID of users is equals to 1. And this is hard coded. It's just to show to you. Basically, if I go here to categories, I have the ID 1, and if I go to users, then I have a column called category ID, as you see here. So with this, it means that now we have a new model called client. Somehow it extends from the user with this way, and it uses this trait called hasParent from Caleb Horsey parental package. I'm just going to save it out, and now what we are going to do is we are going to create a new resource that will also inherit from the user. So I'm going to do it now, PHP Artisan Nova resource. And I don't remember the rest, so I'm just going to look it here. Name, client, and the model, right? So now I'm just going to put -m equals to client. I think it's like this. And now you will see here, sorry, just made a small mistake. You'll see here that I created a resource called client, right? And it extends from the app client. This somehow here you already are using a full resource just for you. Let's see on the screen how does it look like already, if there is something that I'm missing or not. So I'm just going to do F5 here. So you now have clients here, right? And if I click on clients, okay, I start to see some information there, and somehow it's still not working well, so no worries at all. So we need first then to, sorry, my computer is bugging a bit. We need to extend it not from resource, but from the user, in this case. And on this user is the Nova resource, okay? I'm going to remove everything because I want to use the Nova resource, in this case, the user, except the model, that should be the client, right? So now I should be seeing something different here. Exactly the same as the user for the client. There you go. But because we are applying a scope, a global scope, it already filters only for the clients. So as you can see, now you have the users, that is here, and you have your clients. And this allows you now to do any type of override on that resource that you're creating here. So of course, we are not using policies, meaning that if I click on the 83, I place an 84, it's going to change to another one. But you can, of course, then apply policies to this model. And actually, very quickly, I can just do that. We have a client policy. Actually, I already created here. Sorry, the client policy that is being applicable here. And when you have this view, it says return to, but we don't want a return true, right? What we want is return the model category ID should be 1. Again, I'm just hard coding for you to have an idea about this. So if I again click now on the clients again, so sorry again, my computer is a bit slow. Just like this. It's not moving. Yeah, it's really slow. Sorry for that. Okay, here we go. Users. But if I click on clients, I'm just going to see again the filter. If I click on the 83, that's all good. But if I click on the 84, it should generate an error, because we are not allowed to see that one. There we go. So I hope you like it. It's a very good strategy again to somehow create those sub-resources that you can use. And of course, this can be applied for any type of logic that you want to do. To then, when you log in, for instance, you can also filter that only specific for clients that are connected to the person that has logged in, as an example, or other kind of conditions that you might have. Okay, thank you very much. One type of relationship that we didn't see yet on our resources is the polymorphic relationships. So polymorphic relationships, they are a bit more complex than the normal one-to-many, many-to-many relationships, let's say so, or one-to-one. Because the fact they use tables where they use columns, on your relationship tables that will allow you to actually connect a specific model to other several models that has different types. So for instance, in this case, as we know on polymorphic relationships, I'm using as an example here 2 models that are the user and the product that can have reviews. So one review, a model review, can be connected to a product or be connected to a user. And then, as you can see here, there are the rest of the columns that you have. In this case, one more, that is the review, and the reviewable ID is basically the model instance ID connected between the review and the reviewable type model. So for that, and I leave the theory about polymorphic relationships for the documentation of Laravel that explains it very well. So how do we do this in a resource? So I have already a resource called review, I already have a resource called user, and I already have a resource called product. So if I go here to the reviews, at this moment, I don't see here anything connected to products or to users. And to do that is very simple. So we just need to go to our model first, and I'm just going to show to you here on the review, and I'm going to activate this polymorphic relationship called reviewable that morphs. And morphs to what? Well, morphs to a user that is here as via the reviews, morph to many. So as we know, one review can belong to one user, but one user can have many reviews. So that's why you have a morph many on the review model via the reviewable column. And also, besides the user, we also have, in this case, as we saw here, we have the user and the product. So if I go to product, it's exactly the same, a morph many. Sorry, not on this one here. There's also morph many for the review. Very good. So in terms of model relationships, everything is pretty fine. Let's now create the same, but now on our fields. So let's start by the review itself, and we go here to the end where we have the fields. We'll to that method, and actually in this case you just need to call the morph to field. So this is completely explained in the Laravel Nova documentation. So you just need to do a morph to make, and then just call it reviewable. On my case, I just call it reviewable, whatever name you want to give here. As you know, it's just the caption, and then of course what counts is the second parameter that shows the name of the relationship. So in this case it's the same, reviewable. I just keep it like that. But now there is something else you need to specify. You need to specify the types there. So now I'm going to put types, and here you specify what resources do you have that are actually connected to this review resource. So we have the product, and in this case I have the user. So those two are here. So if I go to the top, sorry, if I go here, I just need to add here the two resources. So not the model, but the resource. Okay, we'll leave the model relationships for the models themselves. So we put the product and the user morph to, we just had this relationship to field, done. And now if I go back to reviews, I'm going to start seeing something. Here we go, reviewable product, durable copper car. So if I do view, I then can see here the product where this review belongs to, right? And logically, well, I have 846, and I didn't connect here the pagination, but what happens is after these you might actually go to the one that has the user and then see them there, and basically what you're going to see is instead of saying product, it says actually user, but it's the same. So now how do we do the contrary? So if I'm in the users and I have here detail on one, I want to actually apply here that relationship on the morph many. And here it's exactly the same using the morph many field. So we just go to the user, to the fields, and here we just need to use the morph many, and just call it wherever you want in the plural. In this case, reviews. Again, it will connect to the same relationship named as you gave here. It is called reviews, so no problem at all. And you don't need to specify anything else. You just do these. And if I do now an F5, if I do now a refresh, sorry, I might start seeing here the review. So there is actually no review connected to this user, but of course you can create a review and it automatically populates the reviewable type as user and the user where it comes from, that is the Miss Brennan. So this is my review, and I create a review. The review is created. Of course, it goes to the review details. And if I go to Brennan now to the details, it will appear one line here on the reviews for sure. Yeah, here it is. So last, we just need now to do the same for the product. So I go here now, I'm just going to copy paste actually this one. I go to the product fields and I just call it reviews, do exactly the same exercise, morph many. And now if I go to products, I'm going to see also the reviews of that product. So I don't know if this one has, I actually have some of them because of the seed file that I created. So here we go. And this is a very nice way to actually use the polymorphic relationships in Laravel Nova. Another resource relationship that can get a bit complicated is the many-to-many relationship with pivot fields. So basically, I have here an order product that has an extra column called quantity. So I'm basically having a relationship between two models, the order and the product, and I have also an additional column on the pivot table that is called quantity. So how can we edit this quantity on this relationship on Laravel Nova? So this information is established on the Nova documentation very well, but just to show you here with a practical example how we can do it. So by default, I'm using a belongs to many relationship on the resource, but I'm not putting any additional fields for the pivot table. So how do you do that? So basically, copying past my code base directly here to explain to you what do we need to do. So what we need to do basically is to have a new method called fields where you specify the pivot field that you want to also add when you are editing the resource on that relationship. So in this case, on my order, I am having a many-to-many relationship with the products, but I also want to have the possibility to edit the number, the quantity as a field type number. So just to show you how this works right now, making sure I have all the namespaces. If I go now to the before going, actually we need to do the same, but on the product. So now I go to the product, and here instead of having this belongs to many before the orders, I just add that extra method just like this. So let me just again import namespaces, make a save, all good. So let's go back now here to the products table and see what's going on. So for instance, let me view the product ID number 83 for the order number 39. As you can see, there is a quantity 6. So very quickly, if I go here and I say where product ID equals to 83 and order ID equals to 39, I can see that 6 here on that pivot column on the pivot table. So now if I edit this 39, I have the possibility to transform this quantity. So I'm now going to put 5, I save, and if I go back to my table, it now says 5. So as you can see, you have a very quick possibility to use this type of relationships on many-to-many. And in case you have extra pivot fields on your pivot table, all you need to do is to use the method called fields, and then you pass there the column, the extra columns that you want to edit there. Starting on Laravel Nova 3.3.0, you're able to export the steps. The steps are basically scaffold files that Laravel Nova uses to basically create the template file that then you use to, for instance, create a new resource or create a new action or a new filter. So you can actually publish that and change them for your own customization. This is important in case you start having more advanced functionalities on your Laravel Nova and you start tweaking the template files, or in this case, the ones that are generated by Laravel Nova. And you don't want to each time you do one, you want to, change some things that you always change when you generate, for instance, a new resource file. So how do you use these Nova steps? How do you publish them and how you change them? So we're going to see a quick example on this tutorial. So first of all, when you go to PHP Artisan Nova, you see that there is here now these Nova steps. So this is what actually you're going to use to export the stub files first. And let me just see here. to show you also this option. In case you do change the stubs and you want to reset them to the default content that Laravel Nova has, you just use the minus force. So when you publish them, they will generate a new folder in your Laravel Nova project here, as you can see, in this stubs directory. So it says stubs, Nova, and then here we go. You have all the stubs that Laravel Nova uses, and we are perfectly fine to change them. For instance, the resource one, as we saw in previous tutorials, I was extending it from an abstract resource, right? So if in this case you just change this now to the stub file to abstract resource, is as simple as this. Now when you save it, and when you do now a PHP Artisan Nova resource, just inventing a name, dummy resource. When you go now to the Nova app, Nova folder, you'll see this dummy resource, and guess what? Now you have the abstract resource. So it is very useful again if you again wants to somehow change the template files, and then from there on, you know, every time you use the command file to command line, sorry, to actually publish those template files, it will use your change templates scaffolders. On Laravel 3.1, we start having some new methods that we can use on our resources that are very important to tell you about. These ones are these new fields for index, fields for detail, fields for create, and fields for update. Basically, they will override the fields method, and they will actually run on the specific context that you are working on at the moment of the display. So for instance, if I'm here, I don't know, on my products, and I'm on my detail view, like this one, we can override exactly the fields that we want to have on this context view. So let's give it an example here. For instance, I go here to my code on my product, and I just copy from another one that I already used on a previous tutorial very quickly. Here we go. So we just need to override this one, and instead of calling index, we just call it detail. And here now it just need to work the same way as the fields method. You just copy paste. I'm just going to copy paste the same here, and after this I just need to return wherever fields I want for that detail context. So just to give an example, in this one, so I'm going to remove the delete. I can remove, for instance, the relationships here at the end, and look what's going to happen when I do refresh. Here we go. We just have the fields for the detail. Now all the rest, it still loads the fields in case that you don't have the other methods on your resource. So for instance, in this case, the method in the fields for update is not there. So what happens is you just use the normal fields. Laravel Nova will just use the normal fields methods. So this allows you again to customize the fields and all the behavior of those fields that are connected to it. So you can actually change any logic on the field specific for that context that you're working on, giving you all the flexibility to customize these views or this context the way you want, given the fields that you want to configure on this array. You already learned a lot of things about resources. So let's wrap it up and do kind of a end-to-end assessment on the resource when you need to create a new one. So what things should you care about, especially the ones that are main, and obviously it will depend from your business application that you are creating and from your admin application, but let's say the minimum things that you should care about when you create a new resource. So I just create a new model called supplier, and supplier is basically connected to products. As you can see here, one supplier can have many products attached to it, and a product can belong only to one supplier. And what we are going to do now is to basically create a resource and do a kind of a checklist to see the things that you need to worry about when you do your new resource. So PHP Artisan Nova resource, supplier, and the model is supplier. So when we do this, we get now here on our Nova supplier. Great. So as you can see, it already extends from the abstract resource, as we saw on our previous tutorial, how we change the stubs. And here, basically, we need to look for things that will actually help you to somehow improve your resource and go, as I said, by displays, by validation, by rules, one by one. So what does it mean now that you need to start looking on your resource? So first of all, you need to pay attention to the title. So title, as you know, it's being used when you start creating relationships with this resource supplier. And if normally by default Laravel Nova places the ID, which is not a good thing, because when you're showing your drop downs or things like that, it will appear a number and actually not the descriptive information that you can select. So normally here you can put the name. On my case, the supplier just have a name and an address in that case. So here the title, I'm going to change it to name. Another thing that I need to do is basically actually create the relationships very quickly. So going here to the supplier. So one is the has many, make products, and with the resource product. Don't forget it's the resource, not the model. Here, the field. And the product, I need to put a belongs to here at the end. Actually, I'm going to be a bit up. I can put it here. Belongs to, sorry, make supplier. Sorry, my keyboard. And nothing else. So belongs to supplier, and on the supplier and the has many. So let's do a quick check here. Clicking on the products, supplier, and I just need to refresh to appear on the left side the resource supplier too. And for now just have the ID. So let me quickly create here the text on the supplier, make a name, and also another text for the address on this case. Okay, so fields. Oh my god, fields. Okay, so we have now the fields also on the resource, and we have also the relationship. So very quickly, just do a quick test here on the supplier's resource to appear the products. Very good. Everything is connected. So as I said, the first thing to change is the title. And of course, the title, if you go now to the products and you edit one, what you see now is the name and not the ID. So as you are remember from previous tutorials, that field is actually used to define the way the resource is displayed on other fields relationships. So this is one thing. The next thing is the search. By default, Nova also places the ID to search, which is, in my opinion, a wrong example, not so good to search for an ID, right? You can search also for the name. So it means that here on the global search, when you have your supplier, like Cassin, you can now actually search for it. As you can see, Cassin Muller here. And when we are using global searches, you can actually do more things here. So you can use another method called public function subtitle. And with the subtitle, what happens is it will help you put more information on the global search. So let me put here return. I'm just going to return something stupid. Something stupid. Just like this. So as you can see now on the subtitle, will I search for Emirates, it says something stupid. So this subtitle here, it's very important because actually you can create very nice things there. For instance, you can come up with anything from your field. So this, you have a this, you have a your in this subtitle, when you return something like this, you can actually pass one of the fields that you have. So let's put the address. So if I put like this and I now search for Kirlin, as you can see here, it appears the address. Another thing that you can do on your subtitle is, what if you want to return something like the type of the resource? So for instance, if I search for Kirlin, I want to see the name of the resource here, the type, the context, the label of the resource, in this case supplier. Because for instance, if you see Jamir, you don't know what this comes from, like unless you click on it. And I don't know actually why Jamir is appearing here, to be honest. I'm searching for Kirlin, not Jamir. But to be honest, if I search for Kirlin and I see Jamir, what about if we put the type of the name there? Of course, you already have here on the top, like saying clients, but you can actually put, for instance, a type here. I'm just going to show you there the same way it appears here. So all you have to do is actually to return the reflection class from that name. So you just do a reflection class of the object itself, and then get short name. That's the way. New reflection class, parenthesis, wrong one. So for instance, this is a bit more advanced, right? But it gives you another example. So if I now search for clone, I see supplier here. You see it's already here on the top. But again, it's just to show to you these kind of things that are really, really nice to do on the subtitle. It's up to you to do whatever you want here. You can also return things like I am, and then using also, of course, a PHP example like this, right? And then wherever. Okay, just for you to know. So another thing that you need to look for is to start working on your fields and start putting things here. So one of the things that you need to do is to look for the ones that are sortable. So if you use a sortable like this on the supplier, as you remember, it will actually allow you to also sort like the ID that is here and then the name. You can now sort it also the way you on ascending or descending on this case. Another thing that you also need to look for is the ones that are searchable, especially for the relationships. Let's go back to the product on this belongs to, and I just need to put here searchable. And when you do this, the drop down becomes searchable, which is really, really nice, especially when I have a lot of fields there. And in this case, I'm searching for Cassin, but if I put, I don't know, BA, there's nothing BA, BB, Brown. See, it searches instead of just showing you the full list. It's really, really nice. It's asynchronous, so it's very nice. Another thing that you also need to look for is, of course, the rules. So in this case, you have rules that are global. These are the types of rules that will apply for any type of CRUD operation. But you also have rules that, remember, the ones that you can use, especially for the creation rules, just like this, and also the update rules, right? So in this case, update rules. So you have specific rules that you can create for each of those scenarios, which is really, really important in case you have distinct operations here to do in terms of validation. And another thing that is very nice on the texts, on the field, is, for instance, placeholders. So you can actually also put a placeholder, just like this. This is my placeholder. And it's really nice because now you have already the placeholder customized when you do a create one. This is my placeholder. You can also put a help. And this also helps your users to understand the field in case it's a field that you need to put some information like, please just add future dates. I don't know, just inventing stuff so you can see how does it mean. If I now refresh the screen, it puts a small help text that is really, really nice to help you. Another thing that you need to also work on, or at least see if it's important for you, is the way you compute information on the field. And for that, you have two ways. One way is using the resolve using. So this one will actually compute the data before showing in the screen. So just as simple as just adding the field name or there the information that is there, that comes from the field, from the database to the field, and you can just do like an str to upper name. So this allows you, when you are reading information from the database, to actually compute it and change it. In this case, when you use the resolve using, it applies to all the method, all the context that you have resolve using. But if you only want to change it for display and not for the ones that are for the updates, because if you're updating, maybe in this case product, on the suppliers. In this case, if you are editing the supplier, as you can see, it's an upper, and sometimes you don't want to do this. So that's why in the resolve you have, instead of resolve using, you have the display using. And when you use the display using, it's exactly the same, but it's just only for display. It's not actually when we edit. So Cassian Muller is going to be in the uppercase, but if I edit, it's going to be written as it comes from the database. Now there is something really nice. What about if I want to change the way in contrary, in terms of how I save it on the database? So there is a method that is not explained on the documentation that is called field using. So let me just give you an example here. Again, it's not documented, and you need to pass, I'm just passing the code here from my node text. So here, as you can see, use the field using, and you pass a certain attributes here on the function, on a callable that you create. And then finally you, on the model and on the attribute that is passed here, in this case it's going to be this name, the attribute name, you just say wherever you want to apply it. So it gives you full control on your model and on your attribute. So you can do wherever, see it as let's say a field observer. Okay, you have, as you know, have the model observers. So this is kind of a field observer to actually write something, right? You have the resolve using to read, and you have the field using to write. So for instance, if I do something like this, I'm just changing it to the same thing that I write on the name, but I'm putting you have written, you know, I'm just prepending it with something. So now when I update the supplier, and I just go here to the supplier, am I changing on the supplier? Yeah. So as you can see, you have written. See, it appears here what I did in terms of the change. And this is really, really good in case you want to do a quick, let's say, change on the field data that was written by the user, but you don't want to use complex things like observers and things like that. So you just want to, let's say, immediately change it. So you can do it like this. It's really, really good. I used it on certain specific projects, but again, it's the way you can tweak or at least override the default functionality of writing the field data in the database. Finally, what I want to show to you is authorization. It's another thing you need to pay attention to, is who can actually see this field. So for that, you just use the can see method. And it's very simple. You just pass the request that comes, so you have access to all the fields and things like that all the data that is coming from the request, just like you saw here, right? You can actually do everything, whatever you want from there with the request data, request object. And here you just need to return a boolean, so you return true or false. So I'm just going to return false, so it's on the text name. What's going to happen is you're going to see that the name just disappears from everything. So you can see I'm not seeing the name anymore. So the can see applies to everything. Don't forget that. You don't have it's not only applied to the display in this case, it's an overall can see authorization method. And that's it. At least this gives you a good example about things you need to work on. And again, hopefully it can help you when you are configuring your resource and especially your fields. So let's start seeing the front end of Nova. On this first lesson, we are going to start seeing what are UI components. And UI components are basically view components. So everything on the front end of Nova, especially on the architecture model that was defined, uses view components everywhere. So let me just show to you something to confirm that. So when we go to view, and by the way, don't forget you need to recompile your assets on your Nova folder. So if you have a Nova folder here and you rename the webpack.mix.js.dist to just webpack.mix.js, and then you recompile it with npm run dev, so you can actually have access to the Vue DevTools. So here, as you can see, everything on Nova on the front end are Vue components. This is very important that you acknowledge, that you see how it works, and if it will be good if you have some knowledge already about Vue, because it will help you a lot to understand some certain things that I will teach you here. If not, no problem at all. I will try to do my best also to explain it clearly. So for instance, let me just click here, for instance, on the field name, or for instance the field name. So the field name, as you can see here, it's in this case it's a detail, because we are in the context of detail. So the fields, when you create a new UI component with the command Nova field, you actually will have 3 different types of Vue components depending on the context that you are. You can be on a detail, on a form, or on a in this case on a create. So when you have those ones, what happens is you can Nova will load it accordingly to the view that you are. So I'm in the detail view, so I have here the detail Nova ranged field. And if I click here and then I open this on the props, so props, as you know, are the properties that are passed from the parent Vue component to this child. And here there is one prop called field, and this is actually where a lot of fun is going to happen, and actually we're going to spend a lot of time here on these properties and on the methods connect to this component that affects these field properties. But basically, as you can see, there's a lot of things here that configure and define this field. So for instance, it says there is an index name here, there's the component name and attribute name, there is actually the value called Erling GZ lesson. And what is important to know is that we can affect this, as we saw, from the server to the front end, and we can even pass extra data. So let me just give a simple example to show how you can pass extra data. We already saw this lightly on the first chapter when I started introducing Nova, but let me just show here to go, for instance, to the Boolean is active, and actually you just need to pass with meta, and this method will actually allow you to pass data to that field object that you saw in that props. So I'm just going to put here my data to my value. And when you affect this with meta, Nova, the framework, will actually allow you to use that on the front end. So if I go back here and I click now on is active on the view, sorry, checkbox, and on this field you will see that you have this my data, my value. See, so this is the way, for instance, that we can pass extra data from the server given the computations that you have, and then of course you can use those properties that you'll have here, to those keys, sorry, from the JSON object, to actually do whatever you want on the front end. And this is one way of actually passing information from the server to the front end. Again, all of these are Vue components, so this is what I call UI components. This is Vue components, so we're going to hear a lot about that. But also here on the left, Nova uses router links, so from Vue route, and these ones, they are not affected directly, let's say, as different components given the type of context that you are. So as you can see, they are all called router links here, these components, and even if I go back to the detail, they are still called router links. And of course there are some attributes that change, like the name, now it says index, but that's it. I mean, they don't actually load another type of component there. So again, this is where we start, and from here we take it on to see how we again We use the data from the server on the front end on your new view components that we will create, how we interact view components with view components on the front end. So how do we interact one field, for instance, with another? And finally, we will also understand how we use the API to transfer data back and forth with asynchronous methods. And of course, we will create tools and fields for you to see how the framework works.